Pelletiere, ex-professor de História Militar do Oriente Médio na Escola Superior de Guerra do Exército dos Estados Unidos, é um dos maiores especialistas americanos no Iraque. Cientista político formado pela Universidade de Berkeley, jornalista, era correspondente em Bagdá em 1982, quando foi recrutado pela CIA para trabalhar como principal analista, aquele que interpreta informações e propõe políticas. Durante 4 anos, Pelletiere acompanhou passo a passo os movimentos de Saddam Hussein. A guerra entre iraquianos e iranianos por dentro. Conheceu avanços e retrocessos da diplomacia americana no Iraque e reuniu um volume de informações suficientes para decidir abandonar o serviço de inteligência, acordava da política anti-Iraque de Washington. Passou então a colaborar nos principais jornais americanos. Escreveu vários livros desfazendo alguns sobre o Iraque e o regime de Saddam, muito usados nos Estados Unidos nos dias que correm. Um deles diz respeito a essas imagens dramáticas, marcas do final de uma longa guerra entre vizinhos iranianos e iraquianos, conhecidas como um genocídio de Saddam contra os curdos à custa de armas químicas. Pelletiere confirma que Irã e Iraque usaram armas químicas uns contra os outros, mas sustenta que o resultado da investigação da CIA provou que o gás que matou civis curdos não era iraquiano, era iraniano. Este é o tema desta entrevista.
One of the things that are said about Saddam Hussein making a case against him is that he gassed his own people. He committed genocide against the Kurds at the end of the Iran-Iraq war. What really...
Specifically, what I say in my book is that both Iraq and Iran used chemical weapons against each other. They were trying to kill each other. The story essentially was distorted here in the United States to make it appear that only Iraq used chemical weapons, that the Iraqi chemical weapons killed the Iraqi civilians, the Kurds, and that this was done deliberately as an act of genocide. In fact, we know, or I know, because I was an intelligence officer at the time, that the actual incident was a battle in which the two sides were trying to capture the city of Pelletiere, and both used chemical weapons against each other, and the Kurds, who were caught in the middle, were killed. So you can't say it's genocide. Moreover, the Defense Intelligence Agency in the U.S. examined the battle afterwards, immediately afterwards, and they concluded that based on an examination of the corpses, that the type of gas that killed the Kurds was the gas the Iranians used, but not the Iraqis.
It's called a blood agent.
It's called a blood agent. It's a cyanide-based gas, and it gives itself away because the corpses, the extremities are blue. So they looked at the corpses and they said, well, that's cyanide-based.
And what was Iraq using?
Iraq was using mustard gas.
Totally different effect?
Totally different effect.
Why do you think that the CIA at the time used that information that you say is distorted, that Iraq was committing genocide against the Kurds?
It wasn't primarily the CIA. Unfortunately, the CIA went along. But primarily, it was the Bush administration, the other Bush administration. Up until the end of the Iran-Iraq war, there was not a great deal made of this Pelletiere incident. The DIA said it was the Iranians. The Bush administration accepted that, and no great to-do was made of it. As soon as the Iraqis won the war, and it appeared that the balance of power in the Middle East had been significantly disturbed, because now the Iranians could not fight anymore, the United States realized that it had a problem on its hand in Iraq, because the Iraqis, having won the war, were now beginning to assert themselves. They were beginning to make statements to the effect that only the Arab states in the Gulf should be responsible for the security of the Gulf. Effectively, what they were asking us was to get out, the Americans to get out. So immediately, the administration shifted, and Iraq became the villain. And then you began to get a lot of anti-Iraq propaganda here in the United States. And one of the main charges that was leveled was this one about the gassing of the Kurds. The then Secretary of State Schultz was the one who initially made the charge. And he said not only had the Iraqis used gas at Halabja, but at the very last days of the war, this would be in the summer of '88, they undertook a campaign to wipe out the Kurds using chemicals. And they even went so far as to say 100,000 Kurds were killed, which was nonsense. You can't kill 100,000 people using chemical weapons in the kind of terrain you have in northern Iraq. So I would say it was done to demonize the Iraqis and to cheat them of the victory they'd won, and to hopefully, from the administration's side, reestablish a suitable balance of power in the Persian Gulf.
At the end of the Iran-Iraq War, you said that it would be in the interest of the U.S. to engage Iraq, to try to be an ally of Saddam Hussein.
Well, because for years, the United States has attempted to distance itself from the Gulf. It left it up to the big oil companies to handle all of the affairs in the Gulf. I mean, this is a condition that went on up until 1973 in the OPEC revolution. It was the big oil companies, Exxon, Mobil, BP, Shell, they were the ones who were in control in the Gulf. And the U.S. government pretty much followed their lead and the lead of the British government. When the British pulled out of the Gulf, and in 1973, when the OPEC revolution hit, the United States, instead of going into the Gulf, deputized, I mean, I'll use that phrase, it appointed the Shah of Iran to be America's surrogate, to look out for security in the Gulf. In other words, the United States did not want to take the responsibility for the Gulf. And it has always fought shy of becoming involved in the Gulf. Finally, it worked out a modus vivendi with the Gulf oil sheikhs, with the Saudis and the Kuwaitis and the UAE, whereby the United States cooperated with these countries to keep the price of oil at around $18 a barrel, which suited the United States and suited the sheikhs. But they never engaged Iran and they never engaged Iraq. They were always trying to shut these two out. Now, when Iraq won the war, no realistic person could say you can shut out Iraq, because it's 20 million people. It has the second largest reserves of oil in the world. The army had just won